Hello, welcome to another video where I'm going to showcase some battles from a specific meta, which is the new faction meta called Field Ember, or Ember Field. PvPoke recently updated a list on that. We didn't have it yet for the practice tournament, but this is basically what the meta is. Now, there's a lot of things on this. I'm not going to go through any of this, honestly. There's things allowed, there's things not allowed. It's basically a white list of all kinds of Pokemon. If you want to look real quick through what is allowed and what is not, check PvPoke for the ranking, because it just shows a list of everything that you can use. I'm going to talk about a couple Pokemons here. Now, one of them, Hisuian Quillfish. Really good defensive typing with Dark and Poison, as you can see on top. And it's only really weak to ground. Now, the coverage move on the other side, the offensive side it has, is wide. Very wide. It has poison fast moves. It has a dark charge move. It has a water charge move, ghost charge move, ice charge move. All very useful in this meta. You can hit about anything for super effective. What I do want to imply is that Hisuian Quillfish, even though it's so good in this meta, it also doesn't just beat about everything. The reason why is, as you can see here, is that the stat distribution is just not that high. It has quite a high attack, which means that its defense and HP is not that high. As comparison for Runerigus there, you see it has lower attack, but it has higher defense and lower stamina, but it's still combined still outbulks Quillfish by quite some. And by that, Hisuian Quillfish can flip a lot, can win a lot one-on-one, but it doesn't beat two Pokemons quite easily. This is basically how I sketched the meta from my view. Notice how I didn't put Hisuian Quillfish in here because it has play against anything. So I have Piloswine in the middle because it really hard wins or hard loses. But to be honest, there's not really anything that really hard loses, because everything just hits so hard. You can beat about anything. You can beat about any hard counter matchup if you can get like a shield advantage. So, and it's like the perfect opportunity. Fighters can't really take an avalanche that well. Fires can't really take a Stone Edge or Bulldoze that well. So there's a lot of play on, right? To start off, Piloswine beats Runerigus, one of the best Pokemon in this meta. It beats Zapdos, which you should see as a flying attacker, really, to one-shot like fighters or put up a good fight against anything else. You don't use Electric a lot, and Gligar as well, right? Gligar is also more of a flyer in this meta, simply because you have that aerial ace coverage for fighters as well. A fighter really is necessary to beat Piloswine. If you don't have one, you're gonna struggle a lot. One of the fighters, Poliwrath, is also good against fire types. Fire types are amazing generalists in this meta. There's not much that hard counter them. Poliwrath is about the only water type. Alolan, however, as also a fire type, does pretty well against most fire types, just because fire is resisted, and Shadow Bone, as neutral move, hits pretty well. Fires also beat Piloswine, so they have that going for them, which is pretty nice. Let's take a look at a couple things that I highlighted as well from this meta. Obviously, there are also grass types in this meta and stuff. I didn't really include them because I don't think they're as dominant with flyers, ice, and fire around. But they have play. They have play. Don't get me wrong, right? I did skip them in this because I don't think they're part of the hard meta. One thing that you may have noticed, I put Gligar and not Gliscor. Gliscor is not bad. The reason why I put Gligar is because it has Aerial Ace, and it's just better coverage in this meta. Gliscor really only has Earthquake as an advantage, and that's just very expensive to get to. Do notice also you can't use Shadows in this meta, so you don't really two-hit Ghosts with Night Slash with either Pokemon. So in that, except Treff, of course. But not AWAC and Runerigus. So in that regard, the highest stat distribution on Gligar makes it better in its role than Gliscor is, because it's bulkier. Gligar is bulkier. It's also more expensive, probably. Another thing that I want to highlight, these are the main fire types. They all have their own unique niche. I think Zard might be a staple because they are I think no fairies, maybe very few, which makes Dragon Breath really, really good. Talonflame obviously notorious for brave birding anything. Now, if you can get a shield advance for Talonflame, you can sweep with it. It is a sweeping Pokemon. It can also be very useless in the wrong position. Litleo is not just a fire type, but it's also better against ghosts, but weaker against fighters. Right, also a niche. Castform really is just a standard fire type. Pretty bulky though, so still very good. Marowak is a ghost that also fills a fire type role. It doesn't really have fire charge moves, other than very expensive ones. So it's a bit of both. Victini is a very good hit and run with the V-Create charge move that we all might know. The fighters, there are 4 main fighters in this meta. The best one, probably Poliwrath. Reason why? It has water. There's like nothing in this meta with water, and it's pretty nice in a ground fire meta. On top of that, ice, also very nice for like flyers. Gligar doesn't really like an ice punch. You can win the zeros against things like a Trevenant as well with ice punch, so really nice coverage. But you lose to other fighters because you don't have fast move pressure with Mudshot. The other fighters here, Surfetch, Machamp, Primeape, all have their own unique coverage. A couple things that overlap are like Cross Chop, which is a general decent fast charge move for both Machamp and albeit Legacy for Primeape. But what stands out for Surfetch, I think, is mostly that Night Slash Brave Bird coverage, which hits about everything in this meta pretty hard. And for Primeape, it's Ice Punch. Ice is just a very good offensive typing. Machamp, the coverage isn't really good because Rock Slide and Payback are both quite expensive. They are pretty good moves though, so you can do something with them, but don't expect to beat Ghost if you run Payback. It can be a niche surprise at most. This is the team that I ran. I didn't look too much. I made this team real quick at work, and this is pretty much the hardest meta, save for Zapdos and Electivire. Electivire is a Pokemon that I just personally like. I like to run it in most restricted meta. I can really break the RPS sometimes by just getting shield advantage or in sweeping position, one-shotting position. And Runerigus, Poliwrath, Hisuian, Quillfish, Piloswine, all hard meta. You can't go wrong with that. The only thing I really struggled with is opposing Piloswine, which we see in the below matchup. I have somewhat of a decent matchup here, but also the Piloswine is pretty tough. I also, at this point, forgot to TM movesets, so if you see a weird moveset from me, that might explain why. Let's take a look real quick here. This matchup was quite RPS. That usually happens sometimes in practice tournaments because you both don't know the meta very well. This is an okay matchup. I lose twos if they have Poison Sting, but they decide to swap, and I have the Poliwrath for this Piloswine. Poliwrath was kind of a sure thing to bring because it's decent against the Hisuian Quillfish, good against AWAC, good against Piloswine, and can beat the mirror. I didn't have Ice Punch, so I don't win the zeros against Trevenant, but it's still fine in this position because I hard countered this, and it's also basically my only hard counter, so I thank them very much for swapping that in. They then swap in their Trevenant. Like I said, it was a pretty RPS matchup. This one, I won 2-1. He RPS me game 2. I got him in game 1 and 3. And Trevenant's gonna get hard-walled by Hisuian Quillfish. And this is basically why I wouldn't recommend it. The reason why Hisuian Quillfish is going to be everywhere. It was on 31 out of 41 teams. And that's in a practice tournament where people play this for the first time. They just read immediately, oh, Hisuian Quillfish. So there's that. Shadow Ball resisted, does a nice chunk, but you don't win it as Trev. Poison. This was a poison Quillfish, which doesn't win against Piloswine. It cannot beat Piloswine, but the 2 shields Piloswine wins by like 5 HP, so it can get really close and nasty. Avalanche, a hard-hitting move, barely doesn't kill the Quillfish. As you can see, Quillfish is not the bulkiest Pokemon, but this should do fine because now I can jab down the Quill and the Ghost, and that's over. So yeah, kind of RPS there. maybe if you have one Pokemon that really stands out, don't just say swap it, because it can. If I have one answer to it, only one answer to it, it's very likely that I will bring that hard answer to it. My next matchup against King OWT, he's running a Jumpluff, which I think can be a hard win, hard loss Pokemon. Obviously, again, Quillfish everywhere, Swine quite common, and Quillfish loses hard to those. But Jumpluff puts up a very good fight against Fighters, against Runerigus, and those are pretty big in this meta, right? Especially Poliwrath doesn't really like the Jumpluff. With Acrobatics, you even put up a pretty good fight against all the flyers, save for Zapdos as well. Let's take a look at how this one goes. Jumpluff is a good pick, but it's tough to make it work. I do like that it beats Fighters, Runerigus, and it also beats Other Grass, by the way, but it's difficult to make it manage. My opponent has Snarl here, which makes it pretty good for Zapdos. Anything that doesn't have much fast move pressure is something that Zapdos might be able to beat. I catch the Dark Pulse here, hoping to bait out the Machamp, which I do. Now my Pilot Swine is free because their only other answer is Talonflame. And Talonflame is also a scary Pokemon to bring because it's not great against Quillfish. They outpace you to Aqua Tails. I think, honestly, I should have shielded that just in case it is Talonflame, because I believe I have Stone Edge on my Pilot Swine. Zapdos barely wins CMP. That's because I have a terrible Zapdos and it's easier to get a good Machamp. So usually I win CMP there. They have very similar attack though. My opponent has a Runerigus in the back. So they let Alolan Muck and they have Runerigus in the back. So I think with the Snarl, they probably wanted to be slightly better against the Pilot Swine, because with Poison Jab is slightly worse. But now it's going to be tough because it will get aligned there anyway. My opponent shielded the move CMP'd with me on that second Drill Peck. I knew they needed 7 Shadow Claws to Shadow Ball, and I knew I would CMP on it potentially. And at this point, it's somewhat over because Shield Advantage Pilot Swine is very tough for him. If he doesn't have a load of Marowak or Machamp there. Avalanche is very hard, and at this point, it's somewhat over. I have 2 shields here. Runerigus is not going to do much. Alolan Muck is not going to do much, and my opponent knows that is very much over. So I think that kind of shows that even though Quillfish is a very good generalist, it basically did almost nothing, right? It's a squishy Pokemon, has really good coverage, but can only do so much. Third matchup, I actually lost this one by 1-2. And that's when I show the losing matchup. I'm going to show the winning matchup this time because I think it shows a lot of resilience, while the other two were a little bit RPS. They were not very entertaining to watch. I think you already noticed that in matchup number 1. Let's take a look here. We have my Zapdos into their Runerigus. Pretty terrible lead. 2 Drill Packs don't even take it out. So I go into my Poliwrath, and my opponent answers with their own. They have a pretty difficult matchup, so I was pretty confident in this matchup, to be honest, because they have no Poliwrath answer. Look at their team. The best they could have is a Wing Attack Charizard. That's not gonna do it. I'll let the first move go. It is a Scald. They're trying to debuff me, or they didn't have Dynamic Punch. And I'm gonna throw another Dynamic Punch here. Maybe they were just triple weak to Poliwrath or something. Runerigus is not a bad Pokemon against Poliwrath, by the way. It just has a very good moveset. Shadow Claw, Shadow Ball is just so good, especially with Stab, and it's barely resisted anywhere. Since I thought they have two good answers to my Zapdos, I'm gonna hard swap into my Quill, keeping the Poliwrath alive for a bit, and they have their own Quillfish with Poison Jab. So that would not have been great for my Zapdos because I probably just get farmed down by this. Poison Jab is a pretty strong fast move this time. I have Ice Beam. It's better coverage for the Gligar, so that's nice. And it hits just a little bit harder in that mirror. Not per se always necessary, but it helped here. This looks very tough to win at this point. Zapdos is not going to do well against the Runerigus, But I think I can Mudshot this down because Mudshot, well, I guess is super effective even though it doesn't do much. And Poliwrath barely wins CMP against Runerigus by like 4 attacks, so I'm very happy to come out of it with a Scald, which they shield, and they get the attack drop, which is somewhat redundant. Like Shadow Ball plus Clawing Down will probably take me out anyway, but they bait the Sand Tomb. One thing you should be aware of when you simulate with Runerigus, it usually wins most matchup because it gets that debuff. So you need to be aware of that, right? Sometimes if your opponent doesn't shield the Sand Tombs, your opponent wins the matchup, which is not what you want, right? And like that could cost you a battle, just like in this one. That will take out the Runerigus. That is a good game. I still lost the next two, but I think this shows some good resilience. Let's take a look here. I need to change this real quick because that is a Machamp he had and not a Poliwrath. I think the Poliwrath is a really good pick from him. Sorry, the Prime is a really good pick for him because it has that very nice coverage here. And it just does better against opposing Poliwrath. So that's where it kind of stands out, right? That's where it makes it a little bit tough for me. Let's see how I'm gonna do in this matchup here. We have Maisui and Quillfish into that Primeape. I wouldn't know if a potential Poliwrath would do better here, but definitely does. Would have been a problem. So yeah, at this point he's not even throwing a move, so he's probably gonna use a shield here. Yeah, he does. And it also makes me think he doesn't have Cross Chop, right? He's probably going to throw a Night Slice or Ice Punch here, which is not going to hit as hard. That is the Ice Punch. I have no idea what he would have done. I would think he'd throw Night Slash if he doesn't have Cross Chop. A Cross Chop definitely would have killed me before I got to my second Aqua Tail. Gotta throw this Ice Punch immediately. I don't have fast move pressure on this because I have Piloswine in the back. So this really isn't that great for me. And in the back is Gliscor. I'm going to swap into Piloswine. And in the back is Poison Jab Quillfish. Now you're going to see the power of Piloswine here. I think my opponent, who really likes to be RPS by Dutch streamers, was kind of afraid that Poliwrath really destroys Gligar and Quillfish. So maybe that's why he stayed in, even though he played ABB against Piloswine. But that's gonna bite him now. That's really gonna bite him now because my Piloswine is going to clean up his whole team now. Even though the Gliscor is shiny, I'm not going to show mercy. And I will one-shot that. Avalanche does a ton of damage on both Pokemons here. I didn't see any Trevenant from Elim. Again, it's just not a great Pokemon. It really isn't. Well, I think the Primeape honestly is one of the better. If you go for a fighter not named Poliwrath, I think Primeape is your choice. Because Ice Punch is just so good on like flyers, right? Third battle against Sizzler. That's a player that I rarely lose to. But I also will say now, that I will lose to him when it matters. If I play against him in a Play Pokemon tournament, just like against Dancing Rob, when it matters, I will win everything else. It doesn't matter until it becomes really competitive. He runs a Malamar, Double Fighter, and a Sand Slash. Crazy. If I had a Gligar here, man, that would have been fantastic. I'm not sure it was Sizzler who was a big fan of Malamar, but I don't think it's a great Pokemon. It usually has a lot of play in restricted metas. Having that Superpower Foul Play move is very good coverage. Superpower and Dip is really good usually. But the one thing that I don't like about it, it doesn't even beat Ghosts that well. It takes Neutral because it's also Psychic type. And it has Psycho Cut as fast move, which just doesn't hit hard. Psybeam is a coverage move that it has. It doesn't even beat a one-shot at Poliwrath. The other coverage move it has Hyper Beam. I think Hyper Beam and Foul Play could make a sick save swap. But I also don't think that Hyper Beam one-shots a lot of things in this meta. Maybe the fighters. Let's take a look at how these battles go. The fighters probably shield anyway, because even Superpower already would do so much. Let's take a look. I lead Electivire, finally! This is the first matchup I use Electivire. And I have Runerigus and my Hisui and Quillfish in the back, which make a good core. He's farming up quite some energy. I want to throw... I want to avoid CMP, and he lets that Wild Charge go, which does so much damage. And then I swap into the Hisuian Quillfish. My opponent answers with Kanto Sandslash. Interesting pick. Has Mudshot. What was it again? Night Slash, Earthquake, and Rock Tomb. It's quite of a... It takes quite a while to get to Earthquake. And on top of that, Mudshot doesn't have much fast move pressure. He does charge pretty quick, but it's still a little bit of an iffy matchup where I only need 5 jabs to get to my move. Gonna farm down with the Runerigus to come out with a lot of energy. This could be an Earthquake, which would do a ton of damage, but it's only a Night Slash. I still no-shield that. In the back is that Malamar again, so my opponent might be weak to Runerigus in the back. They don't throw a second foul play, and in comes Zapdos. Runerigus is, I think, also on a similar level as Hisuian Quillfish. Even his worst matchups aren't that bad. So if you got a good Runerigus during last Halloween event, this might be your meta to play. It really is an amazing Pokemon. Electivire, not so much. I'm gonna admit, I really regret picking that. And I think the team would have been way better if I didn't have it. But it feels good to beat Sizzler with it. Kanto Sanchez, interesting pick. I think it's very slow. It does have really nice coverage. But I just think it really lacks power. That's my opinion. The last matchup against Beelzeboy, really good player from, I believe, India. And he has double flyer and a very strong Hisuian Quillfish, Poliwrath, Core, which is basically unbreakable. And he has double ground in Runerigus and Piloswine. Now, my matchup is not great here, I believe. And the reason why is because he has Poliwrath covered so well with his 2 flyers. Poliwrath is what I need to use for the Piloswine. Let's take a look at how this goes against Beelzeboy. I play him a lot, to be honest. I have the mirror here. This is not bad per se, because I don't have my Runerigus on this. Runerigus, on the other hand, isn't bad here either, so I'm not that worried about it. What I am worried about is his Piloswine, because I have no Piloswine answer in the back, so I kind of need to preserve my Poliwrath here. Gonna go for that Dynamic Punch. Kind of dumb to not go for CMP, because I need to know if I win that, which I do. That's absolutely huge. I have almost a full Poliwrath here, and they swap in their Runerigus. My opponent knows that Poliwrath is not that hard of an answer to Runerigus. This was about 60%, I believe, 65, and he lets it go. I'm gonna go into my Electivire. Notice my my moveset. I can hit about everything super effective on this line, and I'll just sacrifice it, thinking it's Piloswine in the back. I'm gonna throw that Ice Punch. This will KO. I have a rank 1, so very fortunate to survive that. And in the back is the Piloswine. Now, what Beelzeboy is gonna teach us is 2 shield Piloswine is it laughs if you don't have a counter user. Because at this point, he will get to 2 Bulldozers very easily. So I think my win con is no-shooting this. And it is the Bulldozer, unfortunately. An Avalanche would not have KO'd yet. Even though it's so strong, Poliwrath can take it pretty well. Gonna throw the Shadow Ball. My only win con is them no-shooting. But they probably know they get to 2 Avalanche, no problem. Even if I bait. So that's game over. I let it go. And, right? Yeah, I let it go. That's unfortunate. Very well played by him. I think I got 1 game against him, which was the last one. I was already 0-2 at that point. But yeah, very well played from him. I hope you like the battles. If you play factions, I hope you found it informative. I think it's a decent meta, but you just need to figure out the right Pokemons to make it as little RPS as possible. And it does have the Pokemons to do that. It really has the Pokemons to do that. But you might need some hard meta with it. Hisuian Quillfish, Poliwrath, Runerigus, Piloswine. Maybe a ground flyer, which is a really nice core breaker as well. And a fire type. I think you're all set if you have some of that. By fire type, you probably need some Poliwrath coverage too. I was already thinking my next team through. Yeah, I really like this meta. So 4-2 record for me. I hope you liked the video. And if you play this, good luck. And see you in the next video.